understanding how you think would improve nearly every area of your life. Your relationships, your decisions and choices, your emotional responses, even your understanding of yourself. Most people spend their lives focusing in on what they think without ever understanding how their thinking develops. Once you begin understanding the psychological processes behind thought itself, you begin seeing the world differently and better. Do you know why you think what you think right now, in this very instant? Do you know why you're thinking what you're thinking? Do you know how you think? Do you want to improve the quality of your thinking? Most people say yes. The only thing that we really essentially control is our thinking. And that thinking drives how we feel, how we behave. In other words, your thoughts shape your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately, essentially, your life. Life is only as good as your mindset. A negative mind will never create a positive life. Choose your thoughts wisely. Wouldn't it be great to learn more about the processes behind your thinking rather than just what you think, so that you choose your thoughts wisely? Here's one realization at the very beginning of this series that may assist you to do that. Recognize right now what your thoughts are, and recognize you're an observer of your thinking and you're not your thoughts. Don't believe me? Examine what you're doing right now. You're observing your thoughts. Most people believe that what happens to them controls how they feel. Pain hurts, and much of our pain is self-inflicted. Much of our ongoing suffering comes not simply from events themselves, but more from how we think about them. And likewise, our joy and happiness are also deeply connected to our thoughts. Wouldn't it be great to learn the psychological basis for how your thoughts develop? Here's an example. Probably you've experienced this. You're driving down the freeway. It's a beautiful day. You're feeling relaxed, maybe even singing Madam Butterfly, and suddenly someone cuts you off. Too close into your lane. No signal. And just like that, your mood changes. Now you're feeling angry, frustrated, and it feels obvious they're to blame. They caused your change. After all, you were in a great mood, and then they cut you off. That's a very clear cause and effect relationship. But that's not actually what determined your thinking and mood change. You could have continued singing, maybe a different song. You could have stayed calm. That option was still available. Even though everything happened in your thinking and feelings in a nanosecond, you still had control of your thinking. You really did, unless you believe that Martians were zapping you. Here's another example. You're standing in line at a movie theater. Someone cuts in front of you, buys a ticket, and walks in. Now, all of a sudden, you're feeling upset. You're in the movie, you're not enjoying it, you're thinking about them the entire time, even while you're attempting to watch the movie. You may be even upset the next day, and they don't even know you exist. So what's really happening? It's not the event, it's how you think about the event. And that is what controls how you're feeling and behaving. If anger comes out of you, it's because anger was in you. Here's an example. Man walks out of a coffee shop with a cup of coffee. Someone bumps into them, the coffee spills out of the cup. Why did the coffee spill out of the cup? It's obvious. Because someone bumped into you. No, it's because the coffee was in the cup. If you're holding anger in you and someone bumps into you, anger will spill out. If you are holding love and calm and peace in you, that is what will happen. And you'll say to the other person, no problem. And that's what this series is all about. Understanding how your thinking works and how it shapes everything else. This is the core idea. Your brain is constantly filtering information. What are the dangers of having your brain construct a reality that's not reality? And then thinking and feeling and behaving on that made up, distorted reality? What was it like when people thought the earth was flat? What will people believe 100 years from now about our current understanding of reality? Researchers estimate that our senses take in millions and millions of bits of sensory information every second, but only a tiny fraction ever reaches our awareness. Want to guess how many? This will really surprise you. About 40 bits per second, which means before you consciously analyze anything, your brain has already filtered, prioritized, and interpreted what you're seeing or hearing. Mom and dad have an infant. The infant's about 3 months old, and 2, 3 in the morning, I'm sure many of you have experienced this, the infant starts crying. Mom and dad hear the crying. Mom probably hears it first. Dad may not even hear it. And mom gets up to attend to the baby's needs. Maybe the baby is hungry. Maybe the baby is uncomfortable in some other way. Now remember, mom and dad were sleeping. They could have been in a deep sleep, unconscious. They may have been in a semi-conscious state of sleep. And while they were in that state, or those states, jets were flying overhead, noise were being made outside, cars were driving by. That noise didn't awaken them. Baby cries, the audible, the decibels perceived by their ears is so much less than the noise that was already around them, and yet they still slept. How do we explain that? The ears experienced as a sense the baby's cry. Signals were sent to the auditory area of the brain through the lower brainstem. The brain interpreted that very relatively low in decibels sound. It then analyzed that sound, and it determined that that was important, that they needed to pay attention to that sound. Meanwhile, they were being told by their brain not to pay attention to the sound of the jets and the cars. That's the difference. The brain already analyzed, while they were still in an unconscious state, the importance of the sound. That's amazing. The brain was filtering, prioritizing, and interpreting sensory input. Wow, we have to study that. Hi, let's change gears for a minute. But those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve. My family, friends, and others also know me as Dr. Steve. For much of my professional career, I've worked in the field of psychology and human behavior. For over 35 years, I taught more than 20,000 students, helping them better understand how we think, how we perceive, and how we make decisions. Over time, I became increasingly interested and very concerned in how those same processes shape political thinking. Specifically, how does human thinking itself shape political perception? How intelligent people can look at the same facts, hear the same arguments, and come to completely different conclusions, not occasionally, but consistently. And the reason for that is not simply a lack of information. It's the way information is processed by our brains. Over the years, it's really surprised me and made me much more curious as to how political thinking develops, how two intelligent people can view the same information, the same facts, and think totally differently in terms of their opinions and the conclusions they form. So let's get started understanding how thinking develops, because I'm certain that you would like to be more clear in your thinking, not just what you're thinking, but a clear understanding of how your thinking develops and is influenced by external and internal forces. Without understanding how the brain processes sensory input and prior experiences, we lose the ability to think clearly. After all, our thoughts do play an instrumental role in how we feel and how we behave. We're making decisions and choices, but most of us don't realize how much those decisions and choices are being shaped and controlled for us by the media, by our environment, and by our own internal experiences and what I'll call our own psychology. Over our time together, I'm going to share some things with you that are vitally important. And yet most people don't understand these things. Stay with me and you'll begin to understand why you think what you think, how your thinking actually works, and how you can use that to improve clarity in every area of your life. Don't think of an elephant. Okay, here's an example. Hypothetically, I will give you $1 million if you don't do that. Huh? Yeah, because right now I know what you're doing. When I said don't think of an elephant, and if you did not think of an elephant, hypothetically, I would have given you $1 million. The first thing you did is think of an elephant. I could have said don't think of a whale, and that's what you would have thought of. How come? It seems like you should be able to follow a simple instruction. Don't think of an elephant. The reason is because the brain is wanting to follow the instruction, don't, but in order to do that, it has to know what the operative word is. In this case, it was elephant. Like I said, it could have been whale. It could have been rhinoceros. It doesn't matter what the following word is. It's the operative word that the brain focuses on. Now you may say, okay, Dr. Steve, you want to call me Steve? Who cares? I get the instruction anyway. Well, maybe it is a big deal. Maybe there's some real practical implications to this realization. Let's say, for instance, you've decided to control some of your eating habits, particularly how much sweets you're eating in a day. And you wake up in the morning and you say, okay, this is it. This is the day. I stop eating as many sweets. I'm not going to eat ice cream. And I say to myself, don't eat ice cream today. Okay, it may not be ice cream for you. Don't eat cake today. And all during the day, you want to stay on your new habit pattern. You're saying, don't eat chocolate chips. That happens to be my favorite. But you see what's happening? From the don't think of an elephant, you are now focused on ice cream, on cake, on chocolate chips, cookies, all day. They were not in your awareness until you brought it there. And once you pay attention to it in your awareness and you give your energy to that, it becomes more prominent in your thinking. Now, some of you may say, oh, okay, big deal. Well, let's talk about more serious habits that people want to change. Let's talk about people who want to stop smoking cigarettes. So they say to themselves, okay, today, don't smoke as many cigarettes. What did we just did? We reinforced the word smoking, cigarettes, all day. How about if it's serious as in someone has a drinking habit and they want to change it? That's notable. That's significant. And so what they say is, don't drink today. Don't drink today as much as you drank yesterday. And all day their attention is going to what they don't want to do. Wow, it is significant. Most people believe that they see the world as it is. Is the earth flat? People thought so, based on their senses. Is the sky blue? The sky looks blue. That feels like a fact, but it's not actually true. Not at least in the way we think it is. What you're seeing is not the world as it is. It's the world as your brain constructs it. I'll give you a brief explanation. When sunlight enters the Earth's atmosphere, shorter wavelengths scatter in all directions. That process is called Rayleigh scattering. Your eyes detect that light, but your brain interprets it, in this case as blue. But there's nothing in the sky itself that's blue. This may shock you, as it did me when I first realized this and learned it. There is no color in the universe. Our species makes it up by what our senses perceive and what our brain constructs. What actually exists are wavelengths of light. Color is something your brain creates. Your eyes don't see. I know there's a retina, there's rods and cones, but they send signals to visual cortex, and then the brain creates the color. So if something as simple and objective as color is constructed by your brain, what about everything else? If something so objective and agreed upon by all humans as the sky is blue is not an actual representation of reality, what about more complex conclusions and thinking that have even much more consequential distortions of reality? For instance, war is not about land and territory and food. No. According to noted historian Yuval Noah Harari, war is people's fight over imaginary stories in their minds. Look at any war, any conflict. Even today, in the world, you will see there is plenty of land and food for everyone. So war is about something else: ideology, historical arguments, people's national identity, and so on and so forth. This channel is dedicated to exploring how we think, and this series is called The Psychology Behind Political Thinking. We're going to break down the psychological forces that shape how we think, how we decide, and how we see the world. The purpose and intention of this series is based on the premise that if we think more clearly, the world will be a better place. In this series, we'll begin by exploring confirmation bias, tribal identity thinking, emotional influence, perception versus reality, and the way information is framed and interpreted, and the psychological research behind how we form beliefs. This is not about what to think. It's about how to think more clearly. If this is helpful, feel free to follow along, because what you believe is not based on what you see. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, professor of psychology at UC Irvine, she's a memory expert, not in the way we think of how do we remember more people's names or numbers or telephone numbers or anything like that. Some of her classic work is in the field of witness testimony and what witnesses remembered. And one of her most classic studies is when she divided two groups of equal size. She divided them randomly. And they were shown, independent viewings, a video of a car accident. And after each group saw the video, again independently, they were asked some questions. One group, we'll call it the first group, was asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? The other group was asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? So you see the operative word, smashed from one group, hit the other group. The first group said that the cars were going much faster than the second group. Smashed first group, cars hit second group. Okay, that's statistically important. And here's the real importance. The first group also said that they saw broken glass on the ground. Guess what? There was no broken glass on the ground in the video they saw. We've always thought that witness testimony was very good testimony. Well, based on her studies, a lot of the judicial system, prosecutors and defense attorneys started realizing the inaccuracy of witness testimonies. Wow, why did that happen? Remember, there's no color in the universe. The earth is not flat. And mom and dad, while asleep, hear their baby crying. Your understanding is based on what you notice, what you remember, what you expect, and what you're already inclined to believe, which most often are psychological biases. In other words, sorry to say this, but it's good news. You're not observing reality. You're interpreting it. And often, you're convinced that your interpretation is reality. Remember those eyewitnesses in Dr. Loftus's experiment? And interpretation has real consequences. It shapes how you evaluate information, how you form opinions, and how you make decisions, very often without realizing it. My goal is to assist you to think more clearly, recognize distortion and biases, and better understand how your beliefs are formed. Because in a world shaped by influence and influencers and noise, the ability to think well is a real advantage. If this kind of research and analysis on how we think is interesting to you, you may want to continue along. We're going to be building this step by step. Please hit the subscribe and like button and feel free to leave comments, because each segment builds on the prior one. And in the next series, we'll begin with one of the most powerful forces in how we think, confirmation bias. It's the tendency to seek information that supports what you already believe and dismiss or reinterpret information that challenges it. Your brain prefers consistency. That way of thinking is the basis for our next episode. And in conclusion, today, let's all make the world a better place. It's been my pleasure and great for me being here, and I salute you for being here also. I look forward to you coming back and would encourage you to bring your friends.